Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 17 of Import Nights, the review series for GranTurismo's JDM performance car selection. And in this particular pick, we're featuring a vehicle which has technically been in another series on the channel in a slightly different form, and that is of course the Honda NSX. Now the particular model that I'm reviewing is the newer NSX, the lower grade model of the NSX once it became the fixed headlight version. It's no longer a pop-up headlight car, and that's kind of a shame to some degree because there aren't really that many cars with pop-up headlights. Once you get up around the year 2000, you've got your RX-7, your NSX, and those are pretty much the two leaders within that category. And although obviously it doesn't make sense anymore to have pop-up headlights, it would have been cool to keep that for a little bit longer, maybe with a restyle. But, that being said, this car does look really good with fixed headlights as well, just as the RX-7 does with modifications. And the NSX is, as we've already discussed on the channel, a very, very strong performance car, especially given the relatively limited fully tuned specs, or specs in any state of upgrade, that is, that it's given to work with. Now, as I said, we have featured the NSX before. We've featured a number of racing versions in the Super GT category within my Tour of Japan series, but we have also featured the road-going NSX in the Super Sport series, but that model was the NSX Type R, the newer shape premium Type R. And the reason why I featured that in that series rather than a sports car series is because that car really is a super sports car. It doesn't sound that amazing in terms of spec, but in real life, as well as on the game, it's one of the best performance cars you can get within the exotic sports car class. And that car takes the NSX basically to its road-going pinnacle, because of course the LM road car isn't a real machine. If that car were real, that would be amazing, but unfortunately it isn't. This model, though, is much more of a pure traditional sports car than the Type R. That being said, the specs don't differ a huge amount between the different NSX models. And unfortunately, although it is a very good car, an outstandingly good car in fact, as an all-round performance machine, I think this car deserves better. Because although it's really good, it doesn't have a huge amount of power to work with, and the potential that this car has goes way beyond the spec that we can get it up to. Consider this particular model, for instance. It's a 92 grand car, and for that, in fully tuned form, its 3.2 litre naturally aspirated engine can be tuned up to 485 horsepower. Now that's not bad, and that's a similar amount of power to the Type R model, and what it does with that power is really impressive. The Type R, for instance, can do around 235 miles per hour without NOS or slipstream. That is incredibly quick for the power. One of the best cars in the game, in fact, in terms of the speed that it gets from that power. But imagine what it could do with more. Vehicles like the RX-7, even the Evo and the Impreza, all have more power than this car. Obviously the Supras and Skylines do, but that goes without saying. If even an Evo and an Impreza has more power than this, why on earth isn't this car allowed to reach more of its potential? The NSX has incredible straight line performance for the power that it's given, but why not make it even better? It's a little OP, but not ridiculously so. This is no Tomicara ZZ2 or Nissan GTR. It's still a usable car that many people will allow into a wide variety of lobbies without putting too much of a fuss up about it. With more power, this thing could be almost untouchable as a street-going sports car. Now the performance that this model can achieve isn't quite up to the par of the Type R, but that goes without saying. You wouldn't expect it to be as good as the Type R. It's a little heavier than you might think, at 1102 kilos, but that's still far from being ridiculously heavy. The horsepower per tonne doesn't suffer too much because it's still relatively light, so 440 horsepower per tonne, especially given its power, is not bad at all. The fully tuned PP reflects how good this car actually is at 545 in its fully upgraded state, and this is one of those cars which I would leave it up to you as to how far you want to try and take this car in its competitive ability. I personally probably wouldn't race it at that high a PP, but it does have the capability to do so. With the right driver, the right tuning, and certainly on the right track, this car can go up against vehicles with significantly superior specs and beat them. So the potential is definitely there, even at the 545 PP level, and although at 92 grand it is a lot more expensive than many of the other cars in this series, that's because the NSX is almost like a different class of JDM car. It's often thought of as being within that same category with Skylines, Supras, etc., but really it's much more of a pure exotic than those cars. That being said, it's in the perfect company with them. They are great rivals to each other, and the NSX does remarkably well considering how much lower its power in particular is compared to almost all of its primary rivals, the Supras, the Skylines, the RX-7s, the GTOs, etc. So from an engineering point of view, it's a car which I have a huge amount of respect for and a lot of people very justifiably love. It just feels like it deserves better. That being said, it's a superb performance car in all of its forms. Definitely check it out. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.